Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome back to Everything Within podcast. I'm your host, Alina Krasnožon. This podcast is all about empowering you to build an extraordinary, fulfilling life and tap into the limitless potential that resides within you. Thank you for tuning in today. 10 years, 3,650 days. When you say it like that, it sounds like an eternity. And yet, sitting here today, it feels like just yesterday I was standing at Kyiv-Boryspil airport, clutching a one-way ticket to Lyon, my entire life packed into a single suitcase. I'm recording this episode on a date that holds special significance for me, my 10th anniversary of moving to France. 10 years since I took a leap into the unknown that would forever change the course of my life. Let's begin. You know, sometimes the biggest decisions in life come from what seems like unattainable dreams. For me, it started in a small apartment in Ukraine, where I'd spent hours poring over French textbooks, dreaming of streets I'd never walked, of conversations in a language I'd only heard in movies. I was 22, a foreign language student who had never set foot outside Ukraine. Can you imagine studying something for years without ever experiencing it firsthand? That was me, teaching others about a culture I knew only through books and films. The truth is, international travel wasn't just uncommon in 1990s and early 2000s in Ukraine. It was a luxury few could even imagine. My family, like many others, couldn't afford such dreams. Vacation meant visiting relatives in nearby villages, planting potatoes in my grandparents' garden, or in rare cases go to the Black Sea, not exploring Paris or Rome. But somehow, that limitation only made my desire to see the world grow stronger. I wanted to discover the whole other world I had never seen in my life. My soul was craving the experience of unknown land, culture, language, people, and cuisine. It was a huge dream of mine for years. I remember sitting in my room, creating elaborate plans, calculating every penny I'd need, a laptop, plane tickets, visa fees. 100 euros for a visa alone seemed like a fortune back then. I took on extra tutoring jobs, saved every penny. Looking back, it wasn't just about saving money. It was about proving to myself that this dream wasn't just a fantasy and that I can actually do it. Being an only child made everything even more complicated. I can still see the mix of pride and fear in my parents' eyes when I told them about the au pair program. It wasn't the prestigious study abroad program many parents dreamt of for their children, but it was my ticket out, my chance to learn French, to have a roof over my head while I figured out the next step. When you can't afford university abroad, you learn to find creative solutions. You know, it's funny how life works sometimes. France wasn't even my first choice. It was just the second foreign language I studied at university. Initially, I dreamt of going to an English-speaking country, but those doors seemed firmly shut. The visas were harder to get, the costs were higher, so France it was, almost by default. Fresh out of university, I spent months hunched over my computer, sending email after email to potential host families. The silence was horrible. Nobody responded, or if they did, they preferred someone from the European Union. Less paperwork, less hustle. Depression started creeping in, but something inside of me refused to give up. After 6 months of rejections and near misses, finally a response that changed everything. A family wanted me. They were willing to do the paperwork, to take a chance on a girl from Ukraine. But even then, nothing was certain. I will never forget that visa interview at the French embassy. The scrutiny, the suspicion in their eyes, it felt less like an interview and more like an interrogation. They were convinced I would never return home. I was treated like a person from a third world country. It was humiliating, but I endured it. Thankfully, the final decision wasn't up to the person who conducted the interview. When I finally boarded that plane, my first flight ever, my heart was racing. My destination, not the glamorous Paris I'd imagined, but a tiny village in the mountains near Lyon. One bakery, one bar. The first few months were pure euphoria. Everything was new, exciting, different. The mountains, the architecture, even the air felt different. My French was basic at best, but in those early days, even the language barrier felt like an adventure rather than an obstacle. But reality has a way of crippling in. The euphoria gradually gave way to anxiety as I faced the notorious French bureaucracy. The isolation of village life started to weigh on me. No friends nearby, no city buzz, just mountains and silence. Thankfully, growing up in nature, in solitude, in my grandparents' house, prepared me for solitude. I found solace in exploring the mountainous landscapes, discovering new trails, and finding beauty in the quiet moments. Even during these difficult moments, I felt grateful and so proud of myself for doing it. Working with children was challenging, with my limited French. But looking back, it was a blessing in disguise that no one spoke English. It forced me to learn, to adapt, to survive in a new language that would eventually become a second nature to me. You know what's strange? Those early struggles, the isolation, the language barriers, they became the foundation of something stronger. Each small victory in communication, each successful interaction built the resilience I never knew I had. That lost village in the mountains, with its single bakery and solitary bar, became the first chapter of my French story. These 10 years have taught me more about myself than any self-help book ever could. When you're forced to navigate life in a foreign language, when every day pushes you out of your comfort zone, whether you're ready or not, that's where real growth happens. Around my third year in France, something interesting started happening. A wave of nostalgia hit me, the kind that paints your homeland in colors more vibrant than reality. We have a saying in Ukrainian, it is good where we are not. How true that rings for many immigrants. You start romanticizing everything about home. The food tastes better in your memories. People seem kinder. Life appears simpler. Social media doesn't help either, with its perfectly curated posts about living abroad dreams that have nothing to do with reality. This is when many give up, pack their bags, and return home. It's a crossroads every immigrant faces. But I remembered the depression that clouded my days back home, the frustration with corruption, the suffocating poverty, the mentality I couldn't align with. I made a conscious decision. Nostalgia wouldn't dictate my life. The past might be comfortable, but comfort wasn't what I came here for. Then came the identity crisis. The moment around year 3 when you realize you're stuck in a peculiar in-between, not quite French enough for France, suddenly too foreign for Ukraine. Home became this complicated concept that I couldn't quite grasp. Can you have 2 homes? Is it okay? Where do you truly belong when your heart speaks multiple languages? For years, I did what many immigrants do, tried desperately to blend in. I attempted to perfect my French accent, hoping it would somehow make me more French, more accepted. Looking back, it seems almost comical, watching immigrants, myself included, trying to erase our origins. But you can't erase your face, your accent, your history. More importantly, why should you? The real breakthrough came when I stopped pretending. Why couldn't I be both? A Ukrainian immigrant, fully integrated into French culture. The moment I embraced my dual identity, everything shifted. It was liberating to stop hiding parts of myself, to let both my Ukrainian roots and French branches flourish. Of course, this journey came with its sacrifices. Some friendships back home faded, distance and time doing their inevitable work, but in their place I found deeper connections with other adult immigrants who understood this unique kind of loneliness. The hardest part, watching life continue back home from a distance, missing the last moments with my grandparents, seeing parents age through video calls. These are the parts of immigrant life that Instagram posts doesn't show you. The birthdays missed, the funerals you couldn't attend, the gradual acceptance that being away means missing pieces of your family's story. The beauty of time is how it clears your vision. 10 years in, I've learned to see both cultures with clear eyes. No rose-tinted glasses, no bitter criticism, just reality in all its complex glory. Ukraine still takes my breath away with its lightning-fast evolution, modern restaurants popping up like mushrooms after rain, local fashion that rivals global brands, and the ability to handle any bureaucracy with few taps on your phone. But most of all, I admire our unshakable spirit, that remarkable resilience that defines us as a nation. Yet, I can acknowledge the challenge too, the corruption that still lingers, the remnants of Soviet mentality, the weight of tradition that sometimes feels heavy. But Ukraine will always be home. It lives in the folk songs I sang with my grandmother, in the recipes passed down through generations, in the very marrow of my bones. And friends, I've fallen in love with the French rebellious spirit, their elegant boundaries, the sacred art of politeness that oils wheels of daily life. I admire how they've mastered the art of living, savoring every coffee, every meal, every moment without waiting for a special occasion. It's beautiful how they turn ordinary Tuesday afternoons into celebrations of life. But yes, I still roll my eyes at the labyrinthine bureaucracy and smile knowingly at the peculiarly French attitude towards customer service. Want to see a specialist? Better be patient, very patient. Here is what a decade abroad has taught me. You can be aware of both countries' imperfections and still make a conscious choice about where to build your life. Better is relative. It's about what aligns with your values, your way of thinking, your vision for your life. I'm grateful that social media wasn't around to tell me what countries were good or bad when I made my choice. These days, everyone's an expert on places they never lived, cultures they never experienced. But real understanding comes from lived experience, from walking the streets, from making mistakes, from building a life piece by piece, not from traveling there for several days and think that you know it all. I've learned to step away from the comparison game that so many immigrants play. Who's more successful? Who's more integrated? Who's doing it right? That's why I often avoid gatherings of fellow immigrants where these comparisons became a sport. Instead, I've chosen to blend with locals, to create my own authentic path. The lessons these 10 years have taught me are invaluable. Adaptability has become my superpower. Throw me into any situation and I will find a way not to just survive, but to thrive. My mind has opened wider than I ever thought possible, embracing new perspectives while holding space for my own truth. I've learned that resilience isn't just about enduring hardship. It's about growing through it. It's about using every challenge as a stepping stone to something greater. My identity now exists beyond national borders, in that beautiful space where cultures meet and merge. But perhaps the most profound lesson has been about acceptance. Accepting that it's okay to love two places differently. Accepting that integration doesn't mean erasure. Accepting that my unique path doesn't need to look like anyone else's. I've learned that true strength lies in vulnerability, in asking for help when you need it, that cultural intelligence isn't just about knowing which fork to use at dinner, it's about understanding the heart of people, their fears, their dreams, their unspoken rules, and speak fluently their language. And most importantly, I've learned that home isn't just a place on a map, it's a feeling you carry within, a mosaic of memories, experiences, and connections that span borders and transcend national identities. 10 years later, I've learned that you don't have to choose between cultures, you can build bridges between them. This understanding actually shaped one of my biggest life decisions, starting my own business. It wasn't just about professional freedom, it was about having the flexibility to visit Ukraine when I need to spend precious time with my family without being limited by the typical 1-week annual leave. Despite the war, I make it a priority to visit Ukraine every year. And recently, something beautiful happened. My mother visited France for the first time since I moved here. Watching her discover French culture, seeing her eyes light up at the same things that amazed me years ago, it was like experiencing everything anew through her eyes. One of my greatest joy has been introducing my French husband to Ukrainian culture. Every time he uses a Ukrainian phrase, every time he asks me for Ukrainian food, my heart swells. It's like watching my two worlds not just coexist, but embrace each other. It's so precious. I've made peace with being a permanent foreigner. In fact, I found joy in it. Being cultural hybrid, I get to cherry pick the best from both cultures, see situations from multiple angles, and appreciate things that many who grew up in Western Europe might take for granted. We've created our own traditions now, celebrations that blend both cultures in a way that feel authentically us. It's like creating a new recipe using ingredients from both kitchens. And the result is something uniquely beautiful. Now, for those of you who walk in a similar path, let me share some practical wisdom I've gathered along the way. Maintaining genuine connections with both cultures requires intentional effort. Read books and news in both languages. It keeps your vocabulary fresh and your understanding current. Consume media from both countries. It helps you stay connected to the evolving cultural landscape. If you can, visit your home country regularly. Though remember, there is no obligation. It's about what feels right for you. Regular video calls with family can help them feel included in your life's journey. Share your daily moments, your small victories, your ordinary days. It helps bridge the physical distance. Looking to the future, I'm clear about one thing. If one day I decide to have children, they will hear Ukrainian from me 100% of the time, no exceptions. It's not just about language, it's about giving them access to their full heritage, their complete identity. Building authentic relationships in your new home takes time and patience. Don't feel pressured to only seek out other immigrants or to only befriend locals. Let connections develop naturally, based on shared interests and values rather than shared nationality. Managing family expectations from afar is delicate. Be clear about your capabilities, what you can and cannot do from a distance. Sometimes you'll miss important events, and that's okay. What matters is maintaining the emotional connection, even when physical presence isn't possible. Remember that integration doesn't mean erasing your past. It means adding new layers to who you are, your accent, your different perspective, your unique way of seeing the world. These aren't flaws to be corrected, but gifts to be shared. 10 years later, when people ask me where my home is, I smile. Home is the smell of French pastry in the morning and the sound of Ukrainian songs in my heart. I spend more time in France now, but Ukraine will always occupy a special place in my heart. Not as a place frozen in time, but as a living, breathing part of who I've become. The person who boarded that flight to France no longer exists. I became an adult in another country, and it has shaped everything, my identity, my character, my worldview. The way I see the world now has been forever altered by straddling these two cultures, these two realities. For those of you embarking on or considering this journey, let me share some hard-earned wisdom. First and foremost, master the language of your new country. Not just enough to get by. Aim for fluency. It's not just about communication, it's about dignity, about being able to defend your rights, about fully participating in society. Be prepared to start from scratch, even if you have impressive qualifications. Yes, even with years of experience and prestigious diplomas, especially if you are not from Western countries, it's frustrating, it's unfair, but knowing this reality helps you plan better. Learn everything you can about immigration paperwork, document requirements, visa renewals, residence permits, become an expert. Start gathering documents months in advance. Get them translated, and don't hesitate to invest in a qualified immigration lawyer or find one for free. It can save you years of headaches and mistakes. Remember, many government workers unfortunately might give you incorrect information. Know your rights, research thoroughly, join expert groups online. Build a network of people who walked this path before you. Yes, finding a job might be 5 times harder than it's for locals. Yes, you might need to validate your diplomas or undergo additional training, but remember, every step forward, no matter how small, is progress. As I look towards the future, I don't know exactly what it holds. I don't know which country I will call home in the next decade, what adventures await, what challenges I will face, but I do know this: the skills I've gained, the resilience I've built, the adaptability I've developed, this will serve me whenever I go. To every immigrant listening to this, remember, your accent is the sound of your bravery, your struggles are the price of your dreams. Your different perspective is not a weakness, it's your superpower. We are bridge builders, the in-betweeners, the ones who know that home isn't always a place on a map. We are the ones who know that belonging isn't about fitting in perfectly, it's about creating space for all parts of who you are. 10 years ago, I took a leap into the unknown. Today, I stand here, shaped by 2 cultures, strengthened by challenges, enriched by differences. And if there is one thing I've learned, is this: the journey of immigration isn't just about moving from one place to another. It's about expanding your heart until it can hold more than one home, more than one truth, more than one way of being in the world. Thank you for listening to my story. Here is to the next decade of adventures, to building bridges, to finding home in unexpected places, and to all of you out there writing your own stories of courage and transformation. Until the next time, bye!